Hi, I'm Andy Jones, your host for Art Talk. And I have literally taught thousands of people to paint. So if you have any desire to learn how to paint, I can teach you how to do it. I'm joined in the Art Talk studio today by my good buddy, Stephen White. Hi, Stephen.
Andy, are we going to the beach today or what? Why are we here in the office?
Well, I don't know why we're here in the office, but we are in fact going to the beach. I've taught lots of different sorts of seascapes, and a lot of times people are like, your seascapes never really have a big wave in them. It's, you've got sand dunes and different things, but never a big wave. So for this episode of Art Talk, we are painting nothing but the big wave. We are going to be painting on a new Plaid surface, which is an MDF surface that has wood veneer on one side of it. And we are going to get started today by applying a white base coat to the wood veneer side.
I get the sense we're going to be using a lot of that today.
We might be using a lot of that today, but we're also going to be using a bunch of different blues and greens. Just before we even get started with our background, I want everybody to know that when you're painting a wave or the ocean or any kind of water, it's always moving and it's always changing. So we're going to try to simplify the action of the ocean waves today and just capture this one moment in time. So I've got a big 1-inch flat brush here, and I'm going to take my titanium white and I'm going to simply start painting this entire plaque with white. And you want to use long, light strokes going down the longest length of the plaque to apply this white base coat.
You kind of grew up going to the beach a lot, yeah? You're from Florida?
I am from Florida.
Are you from the part of Florida where they call it Florida? Say Florida.
Florida. I say it with an O.
Okay, you say it correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though its abbreviation used to be FLA, and now they've just reduced that to FL. But yeah, I grew up really on some of the most beautiful beaches in the world down there on the panhandle of Florida, beautiful Gulf of Mexico beaches. But the one thing about the beach that I don't like is how bright the sun is.
I thought you were going to say sand, like that one bit of Star Wars.
Of course, do not know what you are talking about, Stephen. The, being pretty fair-skinned, about 10 to 15 minutes out on the beach in the sun, and I then start looking like a lobster. It is just not pretty, and the sunburn is always painful. So don't really like that, and I can hear the internet telling me to wear sunscreen.
You need SPF 2000.
Yes, I do. Or when I was growing up, it was very common for lifeguards to use zinc oxide, which is that, it's like titanium white.
I was about to say, I thought they just had some titanium white folk art acrylic paint.
Well, that would probably do the same sort of job as the zinc oxide, but that's what they used to put on their noses to keep them from getting totally burnt. And I would need to completely slather down in that in order to really hang out on the beach. So tell me about the sand in the Star Wars.
It's nothing. It's just this one part of one of the George Lucas prequels where Padme and Anakin are talking, and I don't even remember the context. Anakin says something like about the beach, and out of nowhere he's like, and I hate the sand. It's coarse, it's rough, and it gets everywhere. And it's just become famous for this one, like why was this in the script sort of line,
Well, I will agree with that character that it is coarse, it gets everywhere. But right now we have our background that has been painted white, and we can all take a break now and go and get some icy beverage while our background dries. I'd like to take a minute to thank Plaid Enterprises for sponsoring Art Talk. They are the makers of folk art acrylics, which I absolutely love using. I've used this paint since I was a young tot, and now that I'm an old fart, I still use this paint. We have a 17-piece set that we've curated just for you. Ordering information is in the description below, and we also have great brushes for you. We have a 7-piece set of Folk Art Select Firm Bristle brushes. These are absolutely incredible. I use them every time I paint. And I've never done that in my entire life. Now, let's get back to our video. Okay, our white undercoat is dry. Because we're using acrylic paints, that's going to cause our wood grain to raise up a little bit. And instead of taking a piece of sandpaper and completely sanding down the base coat, and then you'd need to put a second coat on, I'm going to use a bit of brown craft paper, or you could use, you know, just a brown grocery bag or what have you. And we're just going to use this like sandpaper, and basically we're going to burnish and smooth out the surface of our wood plaque. And this is one of the best pro tips I can give you, because it smooths out your surface, but it doesn't really abrade the paint finish. So if you've painted something and it feels a little rough, or you want to smooth out an area, go at it with some brown craft paper instead of sandpaper, and you can smooth down your painting without disrupting the painted surface. And another great thing about this is no sanding dust. So we are smooth and ready to sketch our design onto our surface. Now you're saying, hey, you usually give us a downloadable design, and we often do, but for this you really don't need it. So I'm looking at my painting, and the top of the break in my waves is just about a palm's width down from the top surface. So I'm going to just roughly sketch a horizontal line on my surface. It doesn't have to be precise or perfect, because we are going to break this line in a couple of different places, so you don't really have to worry about that. But let's look at where our wave really breaks down, and then it comes back up and you see just the foam at the top. And we're just going to sketch a little bit of this on our wood panel. So some of this goes up a little bit, and then you'll see some of the foamy areas come down, it comes back up, and it's just going to go along the top of our little horizontal line. But some of this is really going to come down, and some of it's going to have some dimension there, and we've got little bits of this wave that are kind of running down the front surface of the wave as it's coming toward the shore. So this is our rough sketch, and that's all you need to do, because every wave is going to be different. And I'll let you know right now that the wave I paint today is not going to be the same wave that I painted a while back when I did the original painting for this. So let's move a little of our supplies out of the way, and I'm going to put out some Folk Art blending gel on my palette. And I want to use blending gel because I want to give myself a little extra time to work with my paints before they start to get dry or sticky. And I know Stephen is a big fan of the blending gel to give yourself some extra time.
I need it.
Always. Everyone does. All right, so I'm going to put out some cobalt hue, and just for fun, let's put out a little bit of ink spot, which is going to be a darker blue. Let's put out some Prussian blue, which is a really dark, transparent blue color. And it looks black here on the palette, but it really is dark blue. All right, so grabbing a 1-inch flat brush, I'm going to pick up some of my blending gel, and I want to just paint the area kind of above my horizon line with the blending gel medium. Now, the one thing that I will caution you about is using too much blending gel. You want to put a nice even coat on the surface you're painting, but you don't need a lot of it just kind of standing up on the surface. A nice thin even coat is going to be the optimum amount. If you get too much of the blending gel on your surface, all of your paint is going to become very transparent, and it's simply going to slide around more than you want it to. Now, Stephen, you too grew up close to the water, so did you spend much time at the beach?
We would go to the beach and stuff, and we would go to, what's that one place in Florida, Navarre?
Yes,
Yeah, we would go there before it got like really popular. I've heard it's a different place from how it used to be now.
All the Florida beaches are different now than they used to be. I've spent an awful lot of time at this place called Shell Point, which was on the Gulf Coast, but it was not the beautiful white sandy beaches. It was beaches that were oyster shells. So not exactly where you wanted to spend a lot of time on the beach, but heaven knows we had plenty of fun doing all sorts of other kind of coastal activities. I'm going to take the cobalt hue and I'm going to just start brushing this across my surface and just spreading this out. You can see how easily this spreads out because of the blending gel that is underneath it. Just makes everything slide around a little bit better. Let's pick up some of that ink spot and brush some of that in just to give it a little different coloration. And I'm going to use a combination of ink spot and cobalt hue as I move further down. And so far, this is just the easiest thing to do. Just remember to blend with long, light strokes the length of your painting. All right, and now let's pick up some of this Prussian blue, which is a much darker blue color. And we're going to start to stroke this on. And we're going to blend this really dark Prussian blue up toward the top of our painting. And again, you see I'm going all the way across the painting from edge to edge. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to pick up more Prussian blue and I'm going to start right back down here at the bottom and just applying more color, which will give me a darker value down here at the bottom. And we're going to continue to blend upward using, again, the long, light strokes. And I like the way that I got a little bit of that really dark color up at the top. So let's add a little different color to our water. And I'm going to put out a little cascade, which is a nice kind of greenish color, which would look like some foamy color. And I'm going to wipe my brush off just to get some of that excess color off. I'm going to pick a little bit of the cascade and some titanium white, just mix those together here on the palette. And now I'm going to take this new color and we're going to start right up here at the top and we're going to brush this on and use heavy pressure when you're applying the color and then very light pressure as we start to blend now from the top, moving downward using long, light strokes. Go ahead and go all the way off your surface on both sides so that you don't end up with brush marks where you start and stop, because you don't want to start and stop on your painting. You want to do that off the edge. And try to keep these straight and horizontal as you blend. All right, Stephen, have we done anything hard so far?
I think I can manage what we're doing so far.
I'm pretty sure you can, because I know you're following breathlessly along with my directions. All right, so let's let this rest for just a minute, and you could give it a little bit of a dry, but I don't want the whole painting to dry. I just want it to get a little bit sticky. And because we used our blending gel, we had plenty of time to work with the entire upper part of the painting and never had to worry about our paint drying too fast or running out of time to work with it. All right, so let's take our big 1-inch flat brush and really pinch and wipe so that we get all of the excess paint out of our brush. So I'm going to set that shop towel aside and I'm going to pick up some titanium white on my brush and we're going to indicate just a little kind of a ripple of a wave on our painting. So I've got white now on my brush. Don't have a ton of it, but I've just got enough to dampen the brush with the white paint. And I'm going to just kind of move this around a little bit so it's easier to paint and you can still see what I'm doing. But I'm going to start over almost off the left-hand edge of the painting, and I'm going to just slide my brush right along, and as I get to the near middle, I'm going to apply pressure and create a little bit of that kind of wave action that you see right there. And I'm not going to carry it all the way across to the other end of the painting because that's just going to create a white line across there, and we don't want that. So I'm going to wipe my brush off, pick up a little bit more white, and where I started to create this little bit of a wave happening here, I'm going to set the brush down and press and move over and just press again, and I can tap and it's going to soften this out, and we've created the suggestion of a wave kind of breaking out further in the ocean. And let's just, with whatever's on our brush and a little bit of our kind of cascade color, let's come in and do another little bit of a wave in here. Just starting this out, it's going to be softer in color. And I'm sliding right on the edge of the brush, just creating a little bit of a ripply effect. And I can tap my brush down in a couple of areas. And again, just giving the suggestion of a little break in the wave. All right, so we've created a couple of waves there in the ocean. And I think right about now would be a good time to go ahead and either wait and let your water that you've got on here dry naturally, or you can pause the video and dry it with a hair dryer before we start to move on to the main body of water. Okay, our blue portion that we've done so far is now nice and dry, and I am out of room on my palette. Simply turn my palette vertically. We're going to lose a little bit of our hero, but I'm going to try to just set it here to the side so you can see that. But now we've got plenty of room for you to watch me paint. So I'm going to start with a little deep viridian, which is a beautiful green color. And I'm going to use sap green, which is a very dark, beautiful, transparent green color. And this is going to give us just a different green color in the water. And we're also going to use a little thicket, which is a bit more of a dark, yellowy green color. We might as well go ahead and put out a little light blue. We're kind of going to ignore our little foamy area that's going across the top of our wave. And I'm just going to grab a 3/4 inch flat brush here. And we're going to start to develop the kind of curving portion of our wave. And just to show you what that looks like, it's a gentle sloping arc that's going to come down and then go kind of horizontal. So this kind of action is what our wave is going to have as we paint it. And it's all very similar, a slow curve that would flatten out if it had plenty of room to run across our painting. But we don't want anything really, it's not like a C shape or anything like that. It's a very gradual curve, and that's where the water is going to roll up and then would crash back over on itself. Now, speaking of crashing waves, Stephen, do you know where the biggest waves on the planet are? So
it's somewhere that like I didn't expect. Like
you're getting there, because when I read about this, I'm like, who would have ever thought?
Is it like in South America somewhere?
No.
Is it Australia?
No.
Where is it?
It is on the coast of Portugal.
Okay, that's not what I would have expected. It
was not what I was thinking either. But that's where these people surf these, I mean, gigantic waves that could crush them in a heartbeat. Guys that get carried out on jet skis because you can't paddle out to where these waves are. But it's amazing when you see these waves coming in. So I'm going to take, let's start with a little deep viridian, And let's blue that up with a little Prussian blue here. So we've got a nice pretty blue-green color. And I'm going to start right underneath the foamy part of our wave, and we're just using the corner of our brush. We're going to start to lay in the foundation of our wave. Now, this definitely is not the finished way this is going to look. We're just getting some color on our painting, and I'm kind of going over these little kind of curved lines that I sketched on there so that I know where the direction of my water is going to go. And like I said, the water's always moving and it's always changing, and we have to kind of simplify that so that we can paint something. Now, have you ever been surfing?
I have not.
Have you ever had that desire to surf, or are you good,
No,
you know, on the shore?
I think it's cool. It's just like doesn't do anything for me personally, but my friend in LA surfs a lot.
Yeah, I mean, there are, you know, there's some people that are just all about, you know, getting in and doing something. And I'm like, can't you just enjoy it from the coastline?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't everybody watch Jaws? You don't have to get
That's
in the
what
water.
I'm saying.
I'm sure you've watched the movie Jaws by now. Have you not?
I saw it way too young, and that's what made me develop my fear of sharks.
Well, it's, you know, hopefully it's a healthy fear of sharks and not debilitating.
It used to be debilitating. Like if there was a picture of a shark on a page of a book, like I would just have to throw the book across the room. Like I couldn't like physically turn the page.
It's too much, yeah.
And for this part of the video, I'm not even going to be showing pictures of sharks just because I don't want to put myself through that. But
okay, well, like I said, you know, people have seen Jaws. Jaws 2, Jaws 3 in 3D, and Jaws the Revenge.
Yeah, I sort of had the exposure therapy myself. That's why I got the tattoo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I remember when Jaws came out, I was too young to go see it in the theater. My mother, you know, put her foot down and she's like, no, just because other people are going doesn't mean you can. So I was not allowed. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm telling you what I'm doing here. I picked up a little bit of thicket and I put a little pure black out on my palette. And so now we've got a super dark color, and I'm reinforcing some of the dark areas that are on the painting. And again, just kind of scrubbing using the corner of my brush and rolling it around. But I do remember that my aunt was visiting us that summer, and so it's going to sound so old-fashioned to you, Stephen. We read the book Jaws out loud to each other so that we could, you know, be in with what was going on, but not really a part of it.
Never understood scary books.
Scary books are great because you can really imagine what the terror is, and you don't have to wait for some visual person to create that terror for you.
Oh, I just picture like somebody sitting there quietly and then, you know, like at reading.
Well, it doesn't quite work that way, but it was, I remember it being really fun because, you know, it was like we were reading something that we couldn't see at the movies. So there was that kind of little thrill to it.
Yeah,
all right,
that makes sense.
So a little thicket, and let's add some Prussian blue to that, and we'll come over here. And we're creating all sorts of beautiful different colorations that are going into our water, because as the light would shine on this water, it's going to create all different sorts of colors that you're not seeing at the same time. So it's going to change a little bit as you paint your water. And that's what we want to see. Lots of variation here in the water. And just since we've been talking about Jaws, the best Jaws is the original Jaws movie.
Yeah, that's
the rest of them.
That's the only one that I've seen.
All right, so I'm picking up a little bit of Cascade, and kind of in this little puddle of paint that I have on my palette, I'm going to start creating some lighter colors. And these again are applied in the same slight arc that we established with our darker color. And again, I'm just kind of scrubbing this paint in, and I'm using the different corners of the brush, and we're just having fun with this now. So if I want to, I can create a different shade of green by picking up some of the sap green, and I'll have a much cleaner kind of yellowy green where it might be like there's more sun shining on that little bit of water, and that's why we've got that yellow glow in it. You can see that we've got those little arcs kind of happening here in the water. And then don't be intimidated just because it's, we're painting water. It's not difficult. If you really think about this painting or any paintings that we've really done here on Art Talk, it's more about color and shape than it is about an actual subject matter. All right, so I'm adding more of the cascade over here on the right-hand corner, and I can add some ink spot and cobalt hue to this, and we'll just create a little bit of a more blue patch of water there. And we're just softening this together as best we can, and if we've used a color somewhere, we probably want to repeat it in another part of the painting. So let's take some of that blue color and put some over here on the left side of our painting. I want to make sure that that stays in view so you can see exactly what I'm doing. Just lighten some of that color up, and we're just putting some more over here on the left-hand side, kind of softening it in. If it just skims over the other color and doesn't actually blend in, that's perfectly fine. We've got a lot more to do on this water before we're finished. So I've got sap green and some deep viridian just mixed in here with that Prussian blue that we had, and I'm applying this kind of green color into the water and over here on the left-hand side. And some of this is going to remain fairly visible, and some of it's going to disappear in just a couple of minutes. And I'm going to put some more of this deep viridian, and let's just add a little bit of black to kind of tone that down and make this color not quite so bright. Now, if you need a break, you can take a break. I'm going to wipe out my 3/4 inch flat brush, and I'm going to pick up one of my favorite painting tools, which is a flexible blade metal palette knife. And this happens to be a number 6 palette knife, which is a good size to use. And we are going to start skimming color on our water, and we're going to create the illusion of the flickering light on the waves. So I'm going to take some of my cascade, and I'm just going to tap and pat some of this color off on my palette. I want to have some color on the back of the palette knife, but not too much that it's going to create big blobs when I put it on my painting. So how do you know? Well, some of it's from practice, and other is just from, experience. So I've got cascade, so in one of these bluer areas, I'm simply going to set my palette knife down and give it a little pull. All right, so I'm going to ask Stephen to zoom in on this so that you can just see how this paint kind of trails off, and that's going to give you the illusion of kind of sunlight on the water. And there you can see, when Stephen zooms in on this, you can see a little bit more of how you get that kind of sputtering, kind of dappled paint effect on here. And you can hear John Denver talking about sunlight on the water makes him happy. Stephen gave me that blank look he always gives me when I make a musical reference. Letting Stephen zoom in on this, you can see that we've got kind of a sputtering, kind of dappled light effect going on here. And this is looking pretty good to me. So, of course, what do you think I'm going to do? I'm going to almost overdo it. But I want to take a moment and tell you, if you go to do this technique with your palette knife and you don't get this kind of sputtering, dappled light effect and it's just a big blob, you have way too much paint on your palette knife. take more off and give it another try. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit more of this kind of greeny, dappled effect down here in the lower left corner. All right, so I've got some Cascade here, and I'm going to add a little bit of that sap green, which was our transparent green, and we're creating just a different shade of blue-green color. And I'm going to tap my palette knife to take a lot of that extra paint off, and we're going to just apply some more of this color down here, and we're getting a pretty yellowy green color. Again, this sap green has that yellowy green effect in it, and so we get that kind of dappled light effect on our water. And every time you mix up a new color to apply it to your painting, you're going to get a different color, and that's going to add to the visual interest of the painting. And that's really pretty right here where that kind of lighter green is going over that pretty dark blue color. But we're just going to apply this here and there, letting it dapple that color on our painting. And I'm going to take a little bit of titanium white and mix into that. Don't want stark white, but I do want a lighter color than what I was just using. And you can see when you apply this, you do start to get that cool look on the water. Now, since you spent time at the beach and I know are going to the beach again, are you a big seafood eater?
Yeah, when you were talking about what the ideal beach trip looks like for you, you know, being in the shade with a drink, I was thinking mine is at the craw boil.
Yep, so no raw oysters for you?
No, I'll do oysters.
Okay.
But if you give me a choice between crawfish boil, crab boil, I'm over oysters. I'm doing the boil.
Okay. Now, do you like a real kind of, what do they call it? Buford stew, which is like
I don't know what that is.
It's either shrimp or crawfish with your potatoes, sausage, and corn on the cob.
That's what I call a crawfish boil.
Okay.
Craw boil.
Yeah, it's got all different kinds of names for it. And it depends.
Who's Buford?
Listen, I don't know. My dad was a pit master, always some barbecue, stuff like that. And when it would come to this kind of stuff, he would be right there to eat it, but he's not in charge of, making it happen. So
you guys were eating Buford stew.
Buford stew.
Did anybody tell Buford that you're eating a stew?
No, we kept that a secret. That was a thing, or, big shrimp and crab boil, or, fish fry, all that kind of stuff. All right, so I've added a little bit more white, and we are just adding some of these little drizzles of this light color on our painting. But I don't want to do all of this just with the palette knife, so I'm going to grab a number 10 filbert brush, and I'm going to take that number 10 filbert, I'm going to thin down some of my green and white mixture here, blot the excess on a towel, and then holding the brush as far back on the handle as possible, I'm going to just kind of tap and kind of shake this on so that I get a very broken line, and just kind of let some of this kind of drag back and forth, creating this wonderful little marks that you see kind of floating on the surface of the water. And we're going to let some of these just kind of come up in here. And Stephen will zoom in on this area, and you can see where I've created some of these little fine lines on here. So is the crab boil your favorite seafood, or do you have another seafood dish that's like, just the be all and end all?
Man, a good lobster roll is hard to beat. I wish they weren't so expensive. I know that they're not like in places that have like just an influx of lobster.
No, it's funny that you mentioned that, because that is one of my most adored seafood.
They're so good.
They are.
It's stupid how good it is.
Well, the best ones, and I'm sure I'm going to offend like a huge number of people who are watching this who have their own favorite place for a lobster roll, but on Cape Cod, there is a place called Brack's Landing, and the lobster rolls come on a regular dinner plate, and it's hanging off of both sides. They're that big, and all along the top are just huge pieces of claw meat. So it's not just like, shredded up lobster. You've got the claws along the top.
There's one place in Atlanta that I think has the best. I mean, obviously we are not like lobster country down here.
And what's that place?
If you're from Atlanta or the Georgia area, Brown Bag Seafood Company, there's a couple of locations in the city.
Okay,
in my opinion, has the best.
I'll have to check them out, because the last place I looked to have one here in the city, I was like, okay, it's market price, so that means it's
like $30, $40, something like that.
Yeah. And I thought, I am not going to trust a lobster roll at that price in this city. What would Andy do? He would, of course, go get live lobsters and, make them at home.
Sure.
All right, so let's take some titanium white. And this time we're going to add a little, what color is that? Cascade. Could not remember that color name for anything. You can edit that out or leave it in. And I'm going to add a little bit of cobalt hue to that, because I want something that's a little bit bluer than green and fairly light in value. And we're going to tap, tap, tap a lot of that off. And in just a couple of places, I'm going to add some of this lighter blue color that we just made. Oh, that's looking good there. Sometimes you pick something out that you're going to do and it really turns out to be quite the nice change of pace. All right, so I've played with this enough, and you can see that we've got the effect of the water kind of moving in this nice little arc, and that's exactly what we wanted. So let's take our 3/4 inch flat brush, and let's go ahead and just put out some more Cascade, because we have used up our original portion of that. And I'm going to pick up this Cascade on my 3/4 inch flat brush. And what I'm going to do is first things first, let's take this Cascade and we'll add some of our blue to it. And I'm going to add a little Prussian blue to darken it, and maybe just a touch of black just to dull it down a little bit. So when I'm talking to you about what I'm doing here, I want to let you know the whole process and the reason why I'm adding these different colors. Because I want a blue color, but I don't want it a bright blue color. And what I'm going to do is, in this little area right here that I've successfully avoided, I'm going to kind of scrub this color on, and I want to make sure that I've got a little bit of a fuzzy top edge to that. So Stephen's going to zoom in right here so that you can see that this top edge is not a hard line of color. Thanks for zooming in there, Stephen.
You're welcome.
All right, and so we're just going to kind of fill in this little area here, just scrubbing this color on. All right, so now we've got this area that's kind of where our wave is showing behind the area where it's breaking in front. So we're going to take our Cascade and whitish blue, and I've picked some up on my brush, and I'm going to start over here on the left side, and I'm going to just scruff this color on, because I want the edge to be very broken and not solid. So you can see that we do not have a solid, harsh line of color where our wave is breaking here. I'm picking up a little bit more paint as I need it, but not too much. And right up here, I'm going to, once again, kind of scruff this color on so that the top of my wave is a broken line of color. And we just keep creating different colors of this kind of bluish gray. And we're scruffing it on where our wave is breaking over our water that we've already painted. All right, and once again, Steven's gonna zoom in up here so that we can really see the top of this wave where it's starting to break, and it is not a solid line of color. If you have a solid line of color, you've put too much paint on your painting. All right, so we've got Cascade and white. Let's add a little ink spot to that, and let's add just a tiny bit of black to make a different shade of blue. And again, we want this top edge to be very broken, and we want the front edge not to be a solid defined line of paint either, because this is really the foamy part of our wave. Now, when it comes to this area over here where our wave is breaking and we've got these little areas that are coming down further, you do not want them to be what, Stephen?
Straight.
Well, that's part of it, but you don't want them to be the same size, the same shape, or the same distance apart.
That's what I was going to say next.
That's what I thought. All right, so let's shift back to our palette knife, and we are going to start to put the beautiful kind of foaming, breaking water on our wave. So I'm going to pick up some white and move it over here where it's closer and easier for me to load my palette knife. And again, you see I'm just tapping, 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 and taking a lot of that white paint off of my brush. Or it's not a brush, it's a palette knife. Sorry about that. We're going to start over here, and I'm going to just tap and pat some of this on, and you can see that I'm getting a really pretty dappled effect over here. And as I move up to the top, I'm letting some of this kind of break up over that top line and create kind of a little spray of foam. And because I don't have too much paint on my palette knife, I can just kind of rub this out over this kind of gray area that we painted on there and get a really nice foamy look and effect. If you have too much paint, you can't do this because you'll just be creating a big smear of white paint, and that is absolutely not what you want to do. So I'm looking forward to finishing up this painting because Steven's going to go get me a lobster roll, and we're going to have that for lunch.
Need it.
All right, so we're just continuing to add this dappled white effect on our wave. And where our wave breaks, we're just letting this kind of dappled sputtering effect happen. And I want to be sure to keep this nice dark light contrast happening. That's going to make this wave even more interesting. Okay, too much paint on my palette knife right there. But I'm not going to try to mess with it. I'm going to go with it and leave it alone because I know that messing around with it is going to be more problematic than simply leaving it alone. There's a nice expression that I think we all need to keep in mind as we're painting is that you get what you get and you don't pitch a fit. All right, so I'm turning my painting around just so that it's a little easier to work on it and I can keep it in frame. If I was getting out of frame, I know someone would let me know immediately. And I'm just pushing some of this white down onto my wave a little bit. And this is where we get that line from America the Beautiful, talking about the oceans white with foam. All right, so we're just tapping, patting, and letting this white foam kind of dapple all over our little foamy area. And you can't get this effect with a paintbrush. It's just never going to allow you to have this kind of sparse and heavier paint application all at one time. I can just hear the waves crashing. which some people think is just the most beautiful sound, and it's great while you're watching the waves, but once you're ready to be done with the waves, it's just loud noise. All right, so we've got our white on there, but we don't have the spray of foam that I want. So I'm going to get out yet another paint application tool, and this is a good old used toothbrush. And you want a toothbrush, your dentist will tell you to use a soft bristle toothbrush, but for paint application, a medium to firm bristle paintbrush is going to be your best friend. We are going to thin down some titanium white right on our palette. The rule of thumb is the thicker your paint is, the finer your paint spatters will be. In converse, the thinner your paint is, the thicker your paint spatters will be. And you learn this by trial and error and by some practicing. So you want to hold the toothbrush bristles facing your painting, and you want to pull the bristles toward you. If I turned my paintbrush up and flicked, I would cover Stephen in a fine mist of white paint spatters. And he has let me know that that is not on the agenda. We're going to take our toothbrush, bristles pointing down, pulling across the bristles with my index finger, and you can see a nice fine spatter of white speckles showing up there. All right, so since my paint seems to be good on my toothbrush, I'm going to start over here, and in the white area, I'm going to add the spatters and let them just kind of flow out a little bit from the designated foamy area of the wave. Now you can see there's some that are showing up above the wave, but it's not millions of them, because I am very carefully controlling where my foam is going. And if I do want my waves to come up and have that kind of foamy effect, I can add that in a couple of places and be very watchful of where this is happening. And we're going to bring some of this right down here to the front edge of the painting. And every time I pick up some of my thinned white, I want to test it on the palette so that I know exactly where all of my foam spray is going to go. So we'll let some of this travel up there and we get a nice big spray of foam up in this area of my wave. And we just can continue to add more of these white spatters, giving us a really cool kind of ocean spray. Okay. Well, Stephen, if you can believe it, we have finished our ocean wave.
I can't believe it.
I know, it was pretty easy. Thanks for joining us today for this episode of Art Talk, where we painted this great wave. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you would like to leave us a compliment or a comment, you can certainly do that below. We really appreciate that, and it really does help us out quite a bit. Links to our Art Talk kit, our favorite brushes, as well as our surface for today's lesson are below. So again, thanks for joining us for Art Talk, and we'll see you next time.